Okay guys, this is it. This is our video on how to make arm extensions, do it yourself, for very little money, just like exactly like they use in Planet of the Apes. Okay, maybe not exactly like, but for a budget and for doing it yourself, it's not too bad. We've got parts here that we just got at either Home Depot or the drugstore. And we're going to go through step by step how to make a set of these from a simple pair of crutches and a belt and some cane tips. Here we have a standard pair of crutches. We bought these at Goodwill for $8. And in the description of the video you'll see an itemized list of the parts that you need and estimated cost. You also see here, these are Carriage cane tips. There's 2 in a box. These boxes are empty. There's 4 of them here. These are the 3/4 inch size because our final tube, these tubes here ended up being 3/4 inch size, so that's why we went with the 3/4 inch size tubes. Here you see our 1.5 inch carriage bolts with nylock nuts. These will be used to hold the strap to the top of the arm extensions. The rounded part turned out to be really good on the prototype to avoid, abrasion and scratches to the to your arm as it contacts with those. And here we have 3-inch long 1/4 inch screws, just regular Phillips head screws, pan head, and 4 nylock nuts as well. The last thing that we have is we have a woman's belt that we bought today for this project. It's it's about 1.5 inches wide, and we're going to be modifying this as the part that your arm slips through. On the first set, a prototype, you can see we had just a standard men's belt. Turned out that that was a little bit too much stress on the arm because it concentrates all the weight in one area. Ideally we would like to have a much larger set of straps here, but this is what we're working with, so that's what you're going to see in this video. I'm going to go through the basic tools that we use. This is an angle grinder. You may need to use a hacksaw if you can't get your hands on an angle grinder. This one's missing the guard, so I will say don't try this at home. It's really not safe to use this without a guard, but that's what I have, so I'm using it. And I'm very experienced with hand tools, so I'm not really worried about it. This is a hammer. That's for setting our drill points. This is a scratch-all / center punch that I use to mark the points for the drill, because we're going to be drilling some new holes in the crutches. This is just an adjustable wrench. It's for tightening the nylock washers. We have channel locks also to help tighten things. This is a unique tool. You may not have one of these and you may not be able to get one of these. That's okay. This is for punching the new holes in the belt that will support your arms. You can also just use a regular drill bit of whatever size, 1/4 inch probably, to do the same thing. Screwdriver, pair of scissors for cutting the belt. Very important. I'm very into safety for the eyes and ears. When we use the angle grinder, there's going to be a lot of noise and a lot of sparks flying around. Okay, we've got our 2 power drills. This one's got a countersink bit in it. This is for cleaning up the holes after I've drilled them. And this one is for drilling the actual holes. The final thing here is the tape measure. That's obviously for measuring some things that you need to measure. The next thing we need to see is the process of deconstructing the original crutches and getting them from this state with all these extra parts that are totally unnecessary and pointless to the finished product, which, as you can see, a lot of this stuff is gone. and instead of one single center piece, we've got two, and we've chopped off the end of the crutch and we've replaced it with this piece. So we'll get into how to do that next. Okay, so we're gonna remove these rivets, and basically we can remove this piece completely. We're not even going to use it. So this is going over here into my file. No worries. Okay, so in order to remove these, we're going to drill these out. So I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so I'm going to drill this out. I'm using, I don't know, it's a little bit larger than the size of the hole on the rivet. So you can go with a little bigger bit if you need to. I'm just going to hold this really steady with my left hand and apply downward pressure here and just drilling that rivet out. And then I kind of turn the bit, turn the drill around until it reams it out, and that breaks it right loose, as you can see there. I repeat the process on this side. Drill that out. I may have to just punch this through. I'll punch this through on this side as well. In a little bit, we're going to have to cut this plastic piece off and cut these down. So we'll get to that in a minute. In the meantime, this one here has an actual piece of metal that goes all the way through. This one did not. This one was just a rivet that held, I think, part of this inside. I don't know. Yeah, that's probably how it works. This one, though, has a bolt that goes all the way through. So I really only need to drill out the one side. This side I can't drill out anyway. It's like a carriage bolt. So I'm just going to drill this side out. I might need to change my bit. Nope. Come right off. So there it goes. Okay, so I just needed to grab a pair of my channel locks to remove that. Kind of stuck. Their edges there were a little rough. Okay, so now this piece is loose. We're going to save this piece for later. We're going to modify it, and it's going to become the center of these two pieces, and it's going to give us the strength and stability that we need. I believe this plastic piece now should just pop off since we broke the rivets here and here. So I'll just whack it with my hammer, and there it went. You can see those pieces inside. That's where the rivets went through. So now we have this part deconstructed. I'm going to leave this handle in place because it helps hold everything together. And I'm not going to cut the back here until this front piece is assembled, because it would just be really awkward to work with if this was cut off. And I would have no stability up here in the forward part of the crutch to work. I definitely want that stability because I'm going to be drilling some new holes straight through this tube and these two tubes all at once. I've got my Sharpie. We should have shown this in the, we'll put this in the list of items needed, but Sharpie, some other sort of pen or pencil, something that's going to mark on these, on this metal, because you're going to need to mark your holes. So I'm going to cut this piece down. I'm going to leave I'm going to use the end with the cap in it, not this other end. Just like we did here. We're going to retain this one. This one has these side rails that ended up helping us when we were putting it together, because it gave it a little bit more stability. It remains to be seen how that's going to work on this other pair that we're making now, because it doesn't have those. But I'm going to mark this to be about the same size, probably a little longer, because the hole, this one is 4.5 inches. If I make this one 4.5 inches, then we're going to be right in the middle of a hole, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to mark it a little bit longer. I'm going to go 4 3/4 inches. Okay, so I've marked this piece at 4 3/4 inches, just so that I'm not in the middle of a hole. I'm going to get my angle grinder, and I'm just going to cut this line, and then I'm going to clean it up a little bit. This is our piece. It's about 4 3/4 inches long. I'm going to measure and make some holes here. I'll probably use that existing hole, just make it a little bigger, big enough to get a 1/4 inch bolt through. I'm going to make another 1/4 inch hole up here. Okay? Okay, so I've got my 1/4 inch bit, and I'm going to open this hole up. Just be real careful doing this kind of stuff. If you're not experienced with tools, I don't recommend it, because this is going to catch real fast. Just go right through, no problem. That one too. Now I'm going to just go ahead and put my drill all the way through both holes to make sure it's a nice straight through hole. Okay, that one's ready to go. I just need to measure over here. Come over here and take a look at this. So in order to get a similar effect with this kind of distance here, for this to slide up on here, I'm going to have to make sure that this is high enough back that this has plenty of room to fit on. So at least that far up, which means that this hole is going to have to be in line here. And I'm going to want another hole right in the middle of this. So I've got those marks. I've decided to put this piece back through here, the piece that we removed, just to give myself some stability, because when I go to drill through this, it's going to want to go all wiggly on me. So I put that back through. Now I'm going to drill straight through right here, all the way through both pieces. First thing I want to do though is set myself a mark so that my drill has something to grab. So I've just put a little dent there. So now I've got my drill. It's a 1/4 inch bit. It's right on the center of that hole, and I'm going to just slowly start drilling. Make sure your bit doesn't walk. And aim for the center of the bar. I'm going at an angle right now because it's still cutting. But as soon as I get through this, I'm going to have to straighten it out and go straight down. So now I'm through the first part. I've got to go straight through both bars and to the bottom. So I'm going to hold it real steady. Going straight through the other side. Hopefully hitting the center of that one. Once again, I have this piece in here. I put it back just to hold this all together for me so it doesn't wiggle as I'm trying to drill it. So this is aluminum, that makes it a lot easier to drill. So we're all the way through there. That's good. Gonna pass it back through from the other direction. Nice clean straight through hole. Now that I've got that hole through, I'm gonna go ahead and put my carriage bolt through. Hopefully. I'll just tap it in. I've got Emma, she's holding her arm extension, and I'll show you how we measured to determine the distances. Basically we looked at some of the videos with Terry Notary explaining how he uses his arm extensions, and looked at the distances that we could kind of guess at, kind of guesstimate from this point to this point, and then from this point to the end. What we determined was that if we measure from the person's elbow to basically this center line, or the knuckles. That, in this case, hers is 13 inches, and then we added like 2.5 to 2 1/4 inches to the end of that. It actually comes out to 3 because these tips actually add about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. The metal stops right about here. So if you're about Emma's height, what she's about 5'8", that comes out to 13 inches from this point to here, and about 15 1/4 to 15 1/2 to the end of the metal. I'll try to, there's not much more to explain with that. There's not really a lot of theory involved. It's just kind of guesstimating. From what we could see, the arm extensions end up being about 3 inches longer than the distance from here to here. So just guesstimating on that, but that's how we did it. Okay, now I've got the hole through, and I've went ahead and put my 1/4 inch bolt straight through. I'm going to thread a nylock washer onto that. I'm going to be using a screwdriver on this side to hold it, and an adjustable wrench to tighten this. And once it's tight, I'll end up cutting at the very end. I'll smooth that piece off that's going to stick out. So, okay, now I've got this through. I've tightened it all up, and you can see that sticking out. We're going to trim that at the end. The next thing I need to do is while this is in here supporting the whole structure, I'm going to go ahead and drill through both of these now, come out the other side so I can put my second bolt in. The reason I didn't even use, I don't know if anybody that was watching this was wondering, but I didn't want to use this original hole because, for one thing, I had to remove it all to cut everything anyway. But it's a little lower than I want it to be. I'd like to have the support as high up and then as far down as possible. These two screws that are going to pass through, I want them as far apart as possible, just to give it more strength. As you can see here, that gives us a little more strength. I did go with a smaller screw on my prototype here. I'm going with the 1/4 inch on these, just to make it easier for parts list and stuff mainly. We use the same size here at the bottom as we're going to use on the top. So, okay, so once again with my scratch awl, I'm going to mark my point with the hammer. Make sure that I'm going straight down right through the center. So I'm checking both angles from the top and from the side. Because this time I'm going through 3 tubes. And I want to make sure I come out in the middle. This is going to be hard if you don't have much experience with this kind of stuff. You only get one shot at it, so. Okay, so because I didn't have the side rails that were on this other piece on the original prototype, that is making it a little bit harder. So I've changed the angle of the way I'm holding this, and now I'm looking straight down the tube so that I can see my bit coming through. And I think I'm pretty straight on now, so it should be popping out. Around again like before, just to so it goes nice straight. Okay, so now we're putting in the bottom two. Went in really easily, and tighten that up. So we've got this tightened up just like the other side, and using nylock screws, or nylock nuts I should say. That means that I don't really need lock washers on this because the nylock should hold it. And we're going to cut these off, as I said before. Just be careful when you're tightening this down. You don't really want to bend the tube out of shape because you're going to compromise its strength. So just tighten this down to where it's, with a couple fingers on here, you can't really go much tighter, and that should be tight enough. You know, when you're using these a lot, you're going to want to check every so often, periodically come back and check and make sure that everything's tight. Okay, so we've got our bottom part pretty much assembled. I made it a little bit too long here, but it still fits and it's all the way in, so I'm not too worried about it. On my prototype I had a little more space, but on this one not so much. But it is all the way on, so I'm not worried about it. The next thing I have to do is figure out my measurements of my arm, because this set is going to be for me. And so I'm going to do some measurements and then we'll be right back. Okay, we've determined, we've got this measurement all figured out. And when we made our prototype, we based it on Emma, and all the measurements that we took were based on her. So in my case, these ones are going to be for me. This is going to be longer. My measurement from my elbow to the knuckles was 15.5 inches, so I took 15.5 and added about 3 inches, and I'm going to use the existing holes for these handles, so that means we're at about 18 inches for where the handle should be. That's important. You want to get this handle location based on the length of your arm, because the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut off this back piece, but we need to know how long to make it. So we find our forearm length. We already know that because that's what we based this distance from here to the handle on. That's where we got the 18 inches. So we took my 15.5, added 2.5, gave us 18. So now with this in the down position, we've determined that we want about 11 inches from there to this meaty part, the widest part of my forearm. So, and that can, you know, that's something that you may adjust, but for us it's going to be right here at 11 inches. So I'm going to make a couple of holes here, and first I'll probably cut this off, but then I'm going to make a couple of holes here and we'll go on from there. Okay, I've marked a couple of little marks here at 11 inches off of that center of the handle, and I'm going to go ahead and cut that. Okay, I'm ready to cut these off. I'm ready to use my ankle grinder and cut these off. If you have a hacksaw, you can do it with the hacksaw. You're just gonna, it's gonna take a little longer, but here we go. Okay, we're getting somewhere now. All right. Okay, so I've got a little block of wood kind of underneath where I'm going to be drilling here, so that I don't ruin my table too much. I'm just going about 1/2 inch down from the end of the tube. That's good enough. Drill both of these. Just trying to make it real straight, so just as before. Take your time at this. Make sure you use a nice sharp bit. Nice. Alright, both of our holes are drilled with a 1/4 inch bit straight through. I can look right through the holes and see the camera. The next thing we need to do is get our strap to size. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make our arm support, which we're going to use this woman's belt. And the holes are ready to go. We've got our carriage bolts and our lock nuts, nylock lock nuts. So the thing to do is to measure this belt and determine the right size. I'm going to do it by feel pretty much. I've already cut the end of this off flat, just the very tip of it, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap it around my arm here in the spot where I've already determined that it's going to ride, which is the widest part of my arm. And I'm going to pull it around till it's just snug, not tight, because it's going to get a little bit tighter. You can pull it to where it's snug and then slide it back just a little bit, because once it's pulled between the two bars, well, actually my arm's big enough to where it's not going to pull, so I'll go a little bit tighter. So once it's right about there, pretty much snug on your arm, you're going to hold this together, because right here where my fingers are touching, this is where I'm going to put a hole through. So that means that I want to go about ½ an inch past my thumb here. So right about here is where I'm going to cut this off. Use really sharp scissors for fabric if you have them. Otherwise, this is kind of hard to do, especially with really thick leather. Usually I use my electrician snips, but I don't have those handy. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is we're going to punch a couple of holes. Looks like I can use this existing one and maybe make it a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to punch a couple more that go right through the middle here. Okay, this is my belt loop hole maker. I'm going about ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch in from the edge, and then I'm just going to press down until I hear it pop. And I just turn it, work it back and forth until it cuts through while I'm squeezing it. And that usually pretty much does it. Okay, so now I've got my holes on both ends. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and enlarge these holes that I just made, because we need to put a 1/4 inch screw through it, and the hole just wasn't big enough. So it's pretty much what you're going to do if you don't have that tool anyway. Just kind of ream this out. Put it around and do the other side. I'm going to double these up like so and work this through. Now see how I want to have this carriage bolt on the inside, and I'll just pop it through here. Put my nylock on there just to hold it. I'm going to tighten that down in a few minutes. This one's going to come through from the other side. Feel me? Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've put my carriage bolts through, and I've got my second hole on the side here opened up to the same size. I'm going to put my nylock washers on, and I'm going to tighten those guys down. I'm going to kind of hold this with my thumb until it starts to catch, and if you can't hold it, it's turning anyway, so I'm going to have to use my channel locks to hold it while I turn the other side with my adjustable wrench. So this part gets tricky. Not too tricky. Okay, so we've got our screws in, the carriage bolts are in place. I've tightened it until it's sucked the square part of the carriage bolt down into the leather. You see how it's square back in here. That's sucked into the leather, and it's starting to compress the tube just a little bit, which is fine. This side's not as compressed. And the next thing I'll do is I'll cut these bolts off with my angle grinder and make them smooth, just like on our prototype, how we've already done that. We've cut these off and ground them smooth. One other thing, this I could have chosen not to use the part of the belt with the holes in it, but I just figured I'd go ahead and use it. I think I might have just enough here to have made two identical ones, but at least I'll be able to tell them apart. Complete set of arm extensions, custom made for a 6-foot tall human being. And ouch, that's still hot from grinding. Yeah, be careful about that. So I've ground down these the bolts that we're sticking through, so they're smooth. Back down here as well. Everything's solid and ready to go.